Hi, everybody. David Nour back with you with my co-host Randy Seidl for another Sales Community Tech Sales Insights Live. Hello, Randy.
Hey, Nour, how you doing?
Doing great. Good to see you. We
Great.
also have one of your EMC friends joining us today.
Steve Corndell, yes, kind of rock star. Look forward to hearing his story for sure. And before we start, just wondering, did you get your haircut in honor of our 30th episode?
I did. I heard this was the Short Men's Hair Club, so I had to show up, looking the part.
At least Randy, he has the problem of getting his haircut. So there you go.
There you go. Absolutely. Touche. Yeah.
And thank you guys for having me on today.
So, Steve, it's great to have you. For those that may not know as much about you, can you start with a little about your professional background, where you've been and what you've done today?
Sure. So I started my career at EMC and, quickly got paired up with Randy and his team there. And I had multiple roles at EMC, and I thought, I was going to build a career there. And obviously, if I have aspirations to become a CEO someday, that's always been a goal of mine. And I worked with a really good mentor there. His name was Jim McInerney. He, another EMC guy, left and went to Turbo. And then I went with him, and he had a couple of salespeople when I first joined, and I actually started the channel at Turbo way back in the day, which was my first role. And then we quickly sprung into, hey, can you manage a direct sales team as well as the channel? And then two teams turned to four, and then fast forward to today, I'm responsible for revenue worldwide for Turbonomic as a chief revenue officer.
And there's a recent announcement by another big recognizable brand that involves your company. Tell us a little about that one.
Sure. So I'm sure a lot of you saw the news of IBM's intent to acquire Turbonomic. It's been an exciting ride, and really in the last 7 or 8 weeks or so, I started to get to know the IBM team very, very closely. And I think it's a very tremendous strategic fit for our company. I think it's a strategic fit for IBM. And also, I'm a big culture person, and I thought going back to a big company would be a little different. But getting to know the IBM folks, the culture has really shifted. It's a very collaborative group. And I'm excited with their purchase of Instana, Red Hat, and then now Turbo. So I think it's going to be great for both Turbo and IBM, but also our customer base as well.
And for our audience, give us a little glimpse into Turbo's business. Kind of what are you guys focused on? Who do you call on? Give us a little glimpse of where you play in the space.
Sure. So we focus on application resource management, which, there's really two different types of things you need to get the applications performing the way they need. The first is going to be an APM solution like an App Dynamics or Instana, where it really looks at bytecode instrumentation and make sure that your app is architected and written well. The second piece is you start to think about, how that app is resourced. So you have things like, the public cloud now, you have containers coming up, you have the hypervisor stack, and a lot of customers have almost every single one of those. So Turbonomic is agnostic to all of those different things. And through the lens of the application, what we're able to do is look and see the real-time demand of the application and make sure that every layer of an infrastructure stack is continuously resourced in real time. So our customers in an automated fashion get out of the break-fix loop of waiting for something to happen and break and then going and investigating it. They see typically, 37 to 40+% response time improvement. And then the other piece is in the space we play in, we really can talk to a whole lot of different people. So we have a giant market that we can go after. We could talk to, the end lines of business who own the application. We can talk to container people. We could talk to the hypervisor people, the storage people, cloud architects. So there's a lot of different realms. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that the applications are continuously resourced in real time based on what the demand is for those applications.
Seidl, let me ask you, obviously, Steve has done a phenomenal job in growing the Turbo team from direct and channels to the revenue and obviously the acquisition now. What are some of the biggest challenges you've seen in a competent, capable leader joining an early stage company and growing it to some sort of critical mass? What would you say are the top 3 to 5 kind of challenges they face?
Yeah, probably executing all those. And I think to give Steve credit, he also, I think, grew a lot while he was at Turbo. So he was kind of, on the job training, learning, growing, kind of maybe growing into his role, maybe ahead of his skis here and there, but certainly his more than swoosh down the mountain. Probably, Steve would know, specifically better than I, but I think kind of given all those different swim lanes that they play into, probably making sure that you have a focus. You get sales teams are going to, spin up some big opportunity. And if it's not, qualified. And again, I'm sure you had, different criteria you would kind of go through to make sure you're really just not wasting cycles. Because back when Turbo was smaller, you got, limited cycles and teams and pre-sales resources that could really, make the investment in time on deals. And then similarly, I'm sure with your channel and partner activity, same thing goes, where you got to make sure you're kind of spending the time where you can get the best bang for the buck.
So Steve, let me ask you the same. Top 3 to 5 challenges in building and growing and scaling Turbo to where it is today.
Well, I think the first thing is, our technology is super powerful and it touches a lot of people, what I just mentioned. But it was also, we were ahead of the market for sure, especially 10 years ago, around preventing issues, allowing, software to take over a data center. So creating a category over the last 10 years, and it was very difficult and challenging as we built that company. But now I believe we're well poised in the market, especially when you're hearing everything from AI ops to automation to all of these different things, right? I think that was one of the bigger ones. The second one, we can get into the team in place that we have, but I think my team is second to none when it comes from salespeople and sales leaders that we have. I really, really, truly believe that. And the reason behind it is we really shifted the focus away from the traditional model of, hey, I'm just a sales guy, I don't know anything, to really let's become students of the game. Let's become as close as we can to understanding nuances of all different tech, not just Turbo, but what do the competition do at each layer of those stacks? What does, what's the difference between cloud? What's the difference between Azure and AWS? So they really get to know and understand that. So driving a field in growth of trying to get everyone up to speed on the tech has been a challenge. But I think now we're in a spot where we have great sales leaders that can get our team up to speed on that too.
Randy.
Yeah, and probably the umbrella that goes with all that is really is the culture and the people and kind of hiring that right folks. And Nour, I know in Curve Benders you touch deeply on those topics.
Yeah, I Steve is exactly right. Randy, we've all seen, all three of us, as well as our audience, have seen the best teams always win. And the talent you choose to double down on, invest in early, and you build those intra-company relationships that like each other, trust each other, respect each other, have each other's back, will go through walls and are there to stay for the long term. So it's kudos, Steve. That's exactly what it takes to kind of build that. So we've got a great question from Jesse. Randy.
All right. Thanks, Jesse. Steve, what do you find the toughest thing about being a CRO?
Having to work with Ben Nye on a regular basis. No, I'm just kidding. That comes back to the culture we have. He's always done, performance, transparency, and trust. I meet with Ben daily. The coaching and things that he's given me over the years really helped me. And William Souter, he totally agrees. He's I think 5-time customer of ours, and he's probably laughing about that one. But a lot of our company, our customers see the culture that we have and that we do have each other's backs, and that's an important piece. Toughest thing about being a CRO, there's trying to schedule time, I think is difficult. You get pulled in a whole lot of directions. The time zones are difficult, and you start looking at the calendar and you go all day, and then all of a sudden it's 8 o'clock at night, and then Australia signs on and says, okay, how do we start our day? I think that's time management is important to look at. Trying to get out of internal meetings to discuss internal meetings. I'd much rather be the CRO that can talk to our customers and make sure we take care of our customers. So and now we have a lot of them. I think over 3,000 customers now worldwide.
Wow.
So when we're a very customer-centric focused team. So I think trying to schedule EBCs and briefings and making sure that the customers are getting the value of our technology and pushing them up what we call the maturity curve, takes a lot, because customers, some in POCs, they'll say, hey, we're ready to automate everything in a POC. And others, they're very slow to adopt the different levels of automation, just for the fact that AI is now taking over their data centers.
So let me ask you, we're now 14 plus months into this pandemic. Are there some trends you believe are going to continue to really bolster Turbo's success, and which trends could threaten it?
So I think that in the way that our go-to-market has shifted over the pandemic, I think those are two relevant areas. I think now more than ever, customers during the pandemic were working from home. Healthcare is a very large vertical. Obviously, they need the application to be right front and center. They can't have things loading for them. The transition of working from home and our NPM business that Jim Melvin runs for Sev1. All of those things have helped bolster us. But I think also our model of our sales floor and our sales engineering team really helped us be well poised for the pandemic. And what I mean by that is we have, a hybrid model where a lot of our sellers are based in the Boston market, but they weren't the traditional inside sales reps. They would be in the office. We wouldn't have any cubicles. We'd all learn from each other. There'd be a sales bell, so the energy was always up. But they would do Zoom meetings and WebExes over and over and over again. And then when they had to go out and visit their customer, great. They'd hop on a flight. They go out to the territory. They spend 2 or 3 days there. We'd have a marketing event there as well. We'd visit customers, and then they would come back, take all the learnings so we could scale. So when the pandemic hit, that my team was very ready to take over via Zoom. And I think moving forward, as we were at the tail end, hopefully, of the pandemic, it's going to change the way that we've operated. I mean, me personally, I actually counted. I was on 202 flights the year prior to COVID hitting, just trying to build out, across North America. I don't think we'll ever go back to a model where it's 202 flights in a year, especially now that I have a very tenured sales management and leadership team that can sell and go. But customers are now more open to meeting on Zooms, and we've actually transitioned and done things like, customer virtual happy hours where, we would schedule time and not even talk about tech or talk about Turbo or our partnership, but more importantly, build the relationships through the Zoom, have happy hours, play games on Zoom, and just have a good time because, the Zoom fatigue was real for a lot of them too.
Randy, it's great to have Elizabeth coming back. She always has great questions. So we have a question from Elizabeth. You're Randy, you might be muted.
Sorry. What are some strategies your org leverages regarding human capital management and identifying internal talent that you'd like to see move into growth and revenue roles?
Awesome question. And I think the livelihood of Turbo has really stemmed from our BDR program. And yes, we hire experienced people of all different ranks into the company, but to continuously grow Turbo at the rate we were growing it, we needed to hire externally, but we also put together an A+ SDR team. And it's been in place for, since I've been at Turbo. But a lot of those people, they come in, they're either fresh out of college or had a job outside the industry or maybe a year or two of experience. And we throw them through a training program where they start in sales. And they go through, a 4-week boot camp, and then it's 9 months of cold calling. And I actually truly believe, regardless of what field you're going to go in, whether it's marketing or sales engineering, get the at bats and the experience of actually talking to customers and see what they think of your tech to go to other spots. So we've built and developed an SDR program where I think the number was actually 100% of our sales engineering managers started in the SDR program. And close to 80% of my sales leadership team started as SDRs 10 plus years ago and have came up the ranks. That being said, we also have SDRs that went to marketing, went to sales operations, went to a whole bunch of other groups. So we continuously build, that type of model and allow the people to come through the ranks at Turbo.
Randy.
Yeah, and then kind of building on that, I think it may be challenging to have somebody in finance, engineering, or marketing actually take sales roles, but I'm always a big fan of them going on sales calls, and especially now with Zooms, that's something that's easy to do, and especially if they can be exec sponsors and get exposure that way. But I'm sure you'd agree, getting any extra exposure to sales and the customers by the non-revenue generating orgs is a good thing.
100%. And a lot of times I would even have my sales operations team come in and listen to sales calls just so they could see the customer's points. So we can talk offline about figuring out how to put different types of proposals together for the customers. I've personally had them come on sales calls with me so they can see it through the lens of a customer. And I think that's the most important piece. I've had customers come into Turbo to talk about the value they're getting out of the product, where we've had the whole company sit there and watch them as well. And it's a great recruiting tool when customers come in and, we need to hire more people. We did an open house one time with Roger Bowen from Everbank. He flew up on our behalf. He's been a customer for a long time. And we sat in the open area of Turbo, and we had a virtual event for sellers and sales engineers and finance people where they can hear it through the lens of a customer. I think is extremely important.
Steve, I got to tell you, I love this, what sounds to be an outside in leadership. where did you get that from? Was that you believe you're born this way, or is that developed through your EMC days, or where did this come from? Of really this, let's get and keep our finger on the pulse of what the customers are thinking, what the market is thinking. Let's make sure all of our folks are customer centric.
I'm an extremely competitive person. That's first and foremost. I don't care if you want to play go fish with me, I still want to beat you. But the reality is I've had a lot of good sales leaders at Turbo and a lot of great executive teams over the years come through, and to get all of their different perspectives. I mean, people like Jim, people like Mark Thurman, people like Jack. Jack came in, he was a board member, he was original CEO before Ben. He came in from our Sev1 acquisition. He's been the chief operating officer, and he has a very customer-centric approach. And you know what? He was right about it, and we did that. We really shifted to make sure that we take care of our customers and listening to the guys that have the experience over the years, and then molding and adapting it and then applying it to all the internal knowledge over the years I got at Turbo really helped streamline it. And that's why we have such a good customer base.
Seidl, EMC was this way too. So I think Steve had a very early foundation in the reason we're in business is because of these customer relationships.
Hey, geez, that's a novel concept, right?
Right.
Hey, kind of on that selling process, Steve, are there certain sales methodologies that you've kind of used kind of over your career that you kind of are pushing now for your teams?
Yeah, I mean, we've used a lot. We've used a lot of different sales trainings over the years. The reality of it is, when you do something over and over again for 10 plus years and talk to a lot of customers, you kind of craft your own. We do go through medic inspection for any of our forecasting, and we have a very regimented forecast review. I stay true to what I call our management operating rhythm, which allows for, in my opinion, communication from what the executive team's saying down to my team and then to everybody. And I can walk you through and explain that. So every Monday, our executive team meets for 2 hours a day, and we go through the business unit updates. So I personally give the forecast update, marketing will give their update, finance, same thing. And what we do is we take all of that information, and on Tuesdays, I have my staff meeting. I walk my team through the marching orders of the business. They have their internal meetings on Wednesday. We also do account reviews on Wednesday where we look at our top customers and make sure that they're happy and motivated, and we do the EBCs there. And then Thursdays, all forecast reviews for each team. And then Fridays, which I think is a lot of fun, personally, is we have a floor meeting where it's a sales all hands meeting. We go through the forecast, the marching orders, but then we also talk about customer wins. We talk about what marketing is doing from a campaign perspective. So it's ongoing communication. And when I have the floor meeting, I get the questions from them. I get my forecast on Thursday, so I'm ready to go for that following Monday. And we have stayed true to that during the pandemic, which, it's really difficult when everyone's remote for communication, especially when you have everyone all around the world. So I think we have a pretty good cadence around that, and that's what we've been staying true to. And lo and behold, it did help and has worked over the last.
Love it. Love that discipline. Love that consistency. Right. And man, it takes just a driven team to kind of keep up with that.
Yeah. Hey, just as an aside, I was with guys, Riley Hanlon and Billy Scannell last weekend. We're talking about medic, and they actually corrected me. I guess it's med pick now. I guess there's a P, which is paper.
There's medic, and then there's med pick. It's I think EMC was using med pick versus medic, but similar type of thing. Yeah.
So let's stay on that talent conversation. Steve, you've hired a lot of great sales reps. You've developed a lot of great. You said that your BDR culture and kind of growing that farm system. Are there some, or what would you say are the top attributes, particularly in the interview process, that give you with a high degree of confidence predictors of success, right? That person is going to do well here, and that's somebody we want to invest in.
It was a lot easier when it was in-person interviews. And the reason behind it is after we thought, we would, by the way, put people through the gauntlet. It's important to make sure that they're the right fit. Choosing the wrong hire, you try to ramp them, develop them, teach them over 6 months, and realize 6 to 9 months later, it's not going to work out. It stinks for everybody, including the employee that we hired, right? So we used to have, 4 to 5 people across different teams and management, and even sometimes senior management, interview the person. We then make sure we go through reference checks. But the real true factor, which was fun, let's say I was interviewing an account executive, I would pick a random AE on our sales floor, and I'd make that account executive sit on their bus for an hour or two and then get the team's opinion. Did they fit in culturally? Are they talkative across the bus? Were they quiet? And then get their opinions as well, saying, can you fit in this culture? Because for me personally, when I first came to Turbo, EMC was all cubicles and it was very quiet and everyone's in their cube. You come in, if you came into Turbo in Boston, there's a good chance you get hit in the head with a foam ball. You'll hear music blasting. There's a sales bell. Everyone has walk-up music when the deal closes. Everyone claps for everyone. So, but it's also a very collaborative group, and that sometimes is not a fit for everybody. But we also do have cubbies where when you need quiet time, you can go into individual cubbies to do that. So that was the first one. And the second one, what I try to figure out is really two things. How are they going to prospect? And will they continuously prospect, and not just new customers, but get wider in their accounts for customers? Are we selling to just the virtualization team versus the cloud team, container team? Are we talking to the lines of business about their APM solutions and tying that into Turbo? How do they think about prospecting and going wide, because our technology can fit in all different landscapes there? And the second thing is, are they a student of the technology? Do they know and understand the VMware environments, the AWS environments, the Azure environments, and how well do they know it? And I think for me personally, I never wanted to be a CRO that would just, sit behind the scenes and not get in front of customers. And I try to make sure I pride myself on staying up to speed on all the technology, all the different changes, and then how Turbo can help. And I want to make sure that the sellers do the same.
Randy.
Oh, yeah. Culturally, I think it was Ben that brought it, but I can remember years ago, all the Hawaiian shirts, so you'd be at these, kind of, the different conferences, everybody's kind of white shirts, jackets, blah, blah. And, you guys, guys and women all had these, Hawaiian shirts on, which really kind of just, I think was, symbolic of that culture and the fun and, work hard, play hard. Right.
That was at VMworld, I think 2013. I remember that. We had a surfboard out in the booth, and and it goes back to, like, at the end of the day, the customers who we're selling to, they like to have fun too. They like to, roll up their sleeves and work hard, but they also like to enjoy working with certain people. They don't want just a tight knit group that's just going to be business only, So we really try to take that customer centric approach. We've done things over the years, like what we call Turbo Fest, where we'd have a big conference. We had one, my favorite one was in Atlanta that we had. I think it was probably 2014. At that time, we had about 100 people show up in the Atlanta base for our customers. We did a briefing on Turbo. We did a free training, and then we took them all to the Atlanta Braves game. And we had a suite, and it was a lot of fun. And that helps build, customer relationships and all of that stuff. So yeah, we definitely have a lot of fun in the office. Sometimes too much fun, but we also work really hard when it comes to protecting our customers and making sure we beat our numbers.
Love that play hard, work hard kind of environment. So what I heard was right cultural fit, how they continuously prospect, and then student of technology. How would those attributes, how would those predictors change if you're hiring a sales manager or you're promoting somebody to more of a management and leadership role?
Yeah. So most of the managers that we have, I think, except for maybe one, started as an account executive and then became one of the best account executives on the sales team. And then they made the transition into sales leadership, right? And for me, with Turbo being, touching so many different things, when you hear someone who understands the value of our technology on the sales floor, everyone kind of stops, listens, looks, and they want to follow that person, right? So from a sales leadership perspective, I would say that 100% of my sales leadership team, they can go on a sales call, they can demo the product, they can do what we call an install review, walk customers through different things in their environment. And then the other piece is, still same strong sales engineering team to help them, back them up. But the attributes we look for are how fast did they learn the tech? Are people wanting to call them, and are they assuming the position? When I first when I got promoted from just running one sales team to two, I had to name my next lieutenant. So I interviewed everyone on my team saying, if it's not you, who is it? And they picked one individual, and every single one of them picked that individual. I said, why? I said, well, because you have two sales teams, Steve. You can't be on every call. We call that person for help. So assuming the position, I think, from an internal hire is extremely important. And then from an external hire, I look for, how do they treat their employees? How do they get them better? Have they done performance reviews in the past? And then, equally as important, how diverse are you in understanding the technology landscape?
I love that. If it's not you, who is it? So
Great.
Seidl, I know you also have a recruiting business. You've also helped recruit a lot of great sales managers, sales leaders. What are 2-3 of your favorite questions to figure out, is this person going to be a right fit?
Yeah, I mean, I always encourage, culturally speaking, to, try and have the CO or CRO who's ever doing the interview, kind of really dive in that. But I think one area you've heard from me before that I haven't mentioned today, but I think is just around, relationships. So, you kind of alluded to the know me, like me, trust me, buy from me, sell to me, type analogy. So I think, people that have relationships, and I'm always shocked, will be talking to our RVP in whatever, Dallas, Chicago, Atlanta, Boston, New York, San Fran, wherever. And, say, okay, well, what customer relationships do you have? And they rattle off a few. I'm like, well, who else do you have? And then it'll end up more times than not, I know more than they have. And, I'm not active in their geo. So I think it's, the showing those customer relationships isn't just because they're, great on the sales side, whether it's individual contributors or managers, but they really build that, kind of lifelong relationship. And I know you could talk all day on the topic, but maybe you want to chime in from your great relationship economics book.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Is that, our own backyard is the first place you should be developing and nurturing those great relationships beyond any one transaction to now hopefully not just a reason, but a season, if not a lifetime. So that's a great testament to figure out how deeply do they go in wide into those relationships over some period of time. So Steve, talk about your lens on relationships. Again, how do you prioritize them? Where do you prioritize them? Talk about the impact of that, both not just with the clients, but inside the organization as well.
It's probably a little bit of a fault. At the same time, it's a good thing. I allow sales reps, SDRs, you name it, to reach out for help. And the company's getting a lot bigger, so now I try to do it in groups. But having an open door policy with anybody, I think, is important. I always try, when I go on any type of sales trips with any of the sellers, to try to have get the meetings, have great meetings, but then go have fun with them, and take them golfing or take them out to dinner or get a happy hour with them. The culture is so important in any sales organization that I really believe that a lot of these guys that on the team, they also are friends outside of work. So I like nothing more than on a weekend to see a bunch of them together hanging out, saying, hey, cheers, happy Saturday, and the same with my customer base too. I think, it's really fun when you go to the VM worlds of in conferences like that, or the cloud conferences, and all of a sudden you have a bunch of people that they come over and they're so excited to say hi. And then they go and they look at the booths, other booths, and then they come back and they sit at the booth, and then other prospects are coming in saying, oh, you guys got to look at that, So I think the relationship stuff is super important. And if you take care of the people and you go to bat for them and you can help them and you can actually add value to them, then they're going to lean in. And if you can't, I don't want to be the guy that they say, oh, we don't need Steve on this call. I want them to go, hey, let's get Steve involved, and that helps with that culture and that camaraderie for sure.
Love it. So Randy, we got a question from Tucker.
All right, Tucker. ABM programs have been a hot topic recently around sales and marketing alignment. Can you talk about the sales and marketing collaboration at Turbo?
Sure. We so obviously being not the size of an IBM, we have a finite amount of resources that we need to go after. And I talked about the importance of our customer base, and we've made an active shift to take care of the top end of the market with the finite amount of resources we've had. From account-based marketing perspective, we did that shift at the same time. I speak with my CMO, Tom, every day. We do joint reports together. We look at different areas of the business. We look at every individual territory we have. We look at hotspots, and then we go and we fix it together. And similar, Tom's team and the marketing team meets with any of my sales leaders as well as AEs. And the AE really at Turbo is the CEO of their territory. So if they feel as though they need a marketing event or they need some help driving activity or some type of marketing assistance, they call in the marketing person, the field marketing specialist, or the, whoever it may be from the marketing team, and they help drive the events. And it's always a collaboration. I think, Tom is someone that has been at Turbo for a while, and he really drives that, and the communication with his team is like they're an extension of the sales team.
So I want to go back to something you said when I asked you about, predictors of success. You said obviously in person is easier. Do you believe attracting, developing, and retaining that, Steve, exceptional talent, has it become more difficult or less during the pandemic? And if so, why?
For the SDR program, we actually were able to open it up more than just to the Boston market because we're all remote anyway, right? So the talent pool gets a lot larger. So that's a good thing to have. But Chris and Charlie and Kevin, who run the SDR program, they've stayed disciplined to their management operating rhythm. And if I look at the last 2 BDR hired classes, they're the most productive they've ever actually been in the history of our company with the number of meetings they're setting up. On the floor meetings, for example, we had 1 week, we had one guy who was a weekend do a 7 to 10 minute whiteboard pitch on the importance of Turbonomic in front of all of the sellers. The second week, we had someone do the intro meeting deck, second week into the company as a BDR, do the intro deck and why it's important. The third week, we had a BDR 3 weeks in, do an entire demo for the floor. So, look, it's easy when it's 1 or 2 people that you're doing it for. But when all of a sudden, and by the way, Ben will come to those meetings. I'll be in those meetings. All of your peers are in those meetings. You're 3 weeks in and you've got to open up Turbonomics UI and go through that and show the value of what we do to your peers. It's not an easy thing, but they're stepping up. They're learning the tech as fast as they possibly can. And the numbers and metrics and ramp time has actually increased during the pandemic.
Randy, this seems like an incredibly driven culture. Are you hearing the same?
Yeah, well-oiled machine for sure, right?
Well, we've made a lot of trial and error things. That's the nice part about a startup. As Jim used to say, where we were a little speedboat, which we can turn on a dime, but we feel every wave that we would do it. So it's just got to be careful not to go guardrail to guardrail. But at this point, 10 years in, I think we've got the model figured out for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you really had model, you had offering, you had the market, which way you going, ups and downs along the way. But I think Ben and you and the core team really have just persevered it through so well. And then on your prior point, you're talking about presenting to peers. I mean, I always find over the years, reps presenting to their peers is far harder than presenting to customers or presenting to partners. So if they can nail it there, then they're off to the races.
Well, it's fun. It's even, watching, and we would actually take it a step further where I would do mock calls with them and I would be like the director of technology, and Oved, who's my counterpart, he runs sales engineering for me. He'd be the system admin, and we would push them until they didn't know the answer. And it's okay that you don't know the answer, but then we go back and we would teach them, and we would do that. We actually would literally put everyone's name in a hat at the sales floor meeting, and we would pick from it. And then we pick from another hat and we'd say demo, first meeting, whatever. And you have to get up and do it. And then you have to go against this other person. So they would do it live in front of everybody. So they all had to be prepared because they never knew if their name was going to be called out of it. And then the peers would rank them on certain qualifications from 1 to 5. And then we'd show the overall score and who won.
It's like a voice battle sales style.
Yeah, it was a lot. I have a lot of fun with that. It was good in the floor meetings when they were in person, but we do the same now over the Zoom for now.
That's fantastic. All right, switch gears with me on Rev Ops. Randy and I've had a good chuckle about this. Rev Ops, Steve, wasn't a thing when I was selling. You got calls.
Now it's sales ops, Rev Ops,
right?
Yeah.
We would get call sheets and start calling them. So you talked about Tom and your CMO, and that sounds like a really collaborative relationship on the marketing side. Talk about the impact or the opportunity for Rev Ops and its impact on Turbo's growth.
Sure. So the interesting thing is we've had more of a Rev Ops model for the history of our company versus a sales ops model. We just called it sales ops. And when you really look into it, typically, the sales operations person for sales would report directly to me. the sales operations or the operations person for marketing, we reported to Tom. All of the operations team reports into Dickin, who's our CFO. Dickin, previous job, he was, my right-hand man in understanding all the different ins and outs of the business as it related to any financial matters or pipeline generation and forecast. So we've had that model for a very long time. And I've got two dedicated sales operations people for sales. They help everything with historical forecast, hotspots in the pipeline, where we need to be halfway through the quarter from difference between pipeline and upside versus historical conversion rates, plugging in the forecast and understanding our best case versus our commit and our most likely numbers. So they're really well ingrained in the team. We also use them for certain discounts and pricing through what we call a deal desk to make sure that we're in line with other customers from a discounting perspective. So a lot of that has been streamlined through the team, and the sales operations team. Adrian and Zach for me, they meet weekly with my sales management team, and they go through an entire packet at the individual rep level to see if there's hotspots in the business. And then my management team, alongside with Adrian, comments on it to understand what we need to do or if we're good. And then we can easily report that back to our executive team and say, hey, we have a hotspot, Tom, with marketing here. Can you help here? Or this person's not prospecting. So, hey, can we get them some leverage on training and enablement for first calls, for example. So we look at that on a weekly basis, and it's been a very big impact for us.
Randy.
Oh, that's great. So two questions around sales tools, ones that you have that you like, why do you like them? And then if you could wave your magic wand, would there be any additional or new sales type tools or functionalities that you wish you could get?
Yep. So we're mainly out of Salesforce today. We use Zoom Info and Discover.org for prospecting. LinkedIn Navigator is a great one, and just LinkedIn in general. I think that's one that people miss. We're lucky enough at Turbo to have not only a great executive team with a whole bunch of connections, but also our board members have tons of different connections as well. And through the years, there's only so many times you call someone, they're not going to pick up the phone, or they're not going to get hooked on an email from Steve Corndell, who they have no idea about, and all the other reps. But when you can start leveraging people like, Gary Reiner, for example, we actually call it the Gary Reiner effect. There's been points where my sales team has tried to get a meeting. They've done all this research on the company. They understand, there's huge priorities in this. They'll craft up a note. They'll send it to the economic buyer and nothing. And then all of a sudden, hey, we see that you're connected. Can you reach out, Gary? Sends one note, immediately they respond back and said, this looks excellent. I'll talk to him. So that's something to leverage your connections on LinkedIn, especially through the lens of a board member or an executive team. We are, with remote learning and things of that nature, we are looking into tools that will help us on learning modules and things like that, where they can come in, they can see different modules and they can record themselves. So a couple of those we're looking into now as well. And we also use SalesLoft. That's been one that my sales team's been excited to use, and helps with email cadences, when you should call versus email a customer, and what type of content you should say, and it automates a lot of that. So that's been one that the sales team has given me 2 thumbs up from a feedback perspective.
That's great. And if you could wave your magic wand, would there be any other functionality, or don't worry about tools that exist today, but any kind of new ones or types that you wish you could have at your fingertips? I haven't looked into a lot of them recently. I've been busy with a couple other things, but I'm sure that there's some out there. I haven't been up to speed on a lot of them recently. All right, great. And Nour, maybe we'll remind everybody, feel free to post any questions in the comment section, and happy to get Steve's feedback for you.
The one thing I'd say about sales tools, the thing that's been great for our company is our Cisco relationship and our IBM relationship through the lens of an OEM. And it's just getting that first meeting has been the most difficult thing as just Turbo. But when we can partner with Cisco, we can partner with IBM and OEM it, chances are they're doing business with that company. And that's been very helpful from a prospecting and lead generation perspective.
I love how you're leveraging relationships up, down, and across the organization. Talk about channels. Where do channels fit into your growth strategy?
Our main channels are pretty much through the lens of our Cisco OEM and the Cisco partners that they have. So we piggyback on Cisco and we train their top partners. and we're doing the same with IBM as well. So most of our channel aspect has been through the lens of, let's go and look at which one Cisco's selling to. Let's go talk to the top Cisco channel partners, and then let's enable them and explain the value of Turbo, and even talk, have our team go out and talk to, the big channel partners of the world to say, hey, let us give you more in-depth training, or we can help you through the lens of Cisco, as well as IBM.
Are there some common traits between the strongest kind of Cisco or IBM channel partners? What are they doing exceptionally well?
I think it's just a maturity thing. It's getting them to really understand the nuances of our technology, just for the fact that, and I started my career in the channel for EMC. I sat on site at CDW as the EMC expert, teaching them how to, what the value of shared storage is, right? But at the end of the day, if someone like CDW, the customer calls them and says, hey, I'm out of storage. Should I buy NetApp or EMC? And they go, well, Steve's right here. He can help me sell it. Buy EMC. Where Turbo, they get all excited about it through maybe one training, and they don't get until they get the reinforcements. They go, well, how are you different than this? And how are you different than that? And that, and then they go, oh, and then there's a pause, right? So we have to have continuous reinforcement about what we do and how we do it. And once they get one or two under their belt, and they start to see a sales campaign, they see how easy it is to get installed into any size environment within an hour, and then the customer sees all the performance issues in their environment and how to fix them, they can then take that win and go to another customer. So the traits are really at the rep level is how much are we reinforcing them? And we've done thousands and thousands of trainings over the last couple of years for Cisco and IBM's channel. So they're starting to actively, bring us opportunities through Cisco, through IBM, in that channel world.
So obviously you've done well. Kudos on the enormity of your success today. Steve, you're about to enter a new chapter with this IBM potential relationship. How do you continue to learn and grow as a leader?
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunities. So I spent a lot of time with the IBM leaders over the last 7 or 8 weeks, and really there was two things I wanted to make sure of. Number one, we had a strong strategic fit from a technology perspective, and with their top level partnership with Cisco is great. Their Instana acquisition, their Red Hat acquisition, their AI ops driven. I think that the technology is going to speak for itself, so that's put on the side. The second thing is from a culture perspective, they have a lot of great people that I've met, and a lot of great sales leaders, and I think I can learn a lot from some of them that I'll be working with now for the next foreseeable future. So from that perspective is one. The second one is IBM is so excited and bullish on our technology, and we are as well. That's going to allow us to really pour gas on the fire and allow us to accelerate our revenue. So I'm sure I'll learn more about scale and different time zones. I mean, they continue to warn us there's 700 turbos, but there's 349,000 IBM employees. If we could just enable them, get them trained up, ready to go, that's going to be a huge opportunity and a big learning curve to go address.
Got it. So trends in the pandemic that you believe are going to dramatically change technology sales and sales management. And if you're an incoming CRO on the other side of this pandemic, how are you thinking? How are you leading differently?
I think it's going to be far less travel. I'd say about 50% less travel in the past. I think it's going to be more on Zoom. I think that the customers are now understanding that they can work from home. So I don't think it'll ever be a spot where, I was always big in, if you're not traveling, be in the office 5 days a week, get the culture, right? And when the pandemic hit, I'm going, what's going to go on here where we have, a lot of young, fresh new sellers all working remote. If you can really understand and hone in on that management operating rhythm and stick to it and hold your managers accountable for managing, I think you'll see people will come into the office, but probably not 5 days a week. And they'll take a lot more meetings over Zoom, and it's through the lens of the customer. They're doing the same and they're okay with it. So I think those are the big trends that I would see. But I also think that people want to see people more so than ever. I mean, working out of the basement of my home for the last year and a half with kids running around, it's been great to hear my kids and see them. And I'm shocked that they haven't came down here saying, Daddy, who are you talking to now? And it's been awesome, but it's also, nice and refreshing to be able to see the people that you're working with every day and collaborate with.
Seidl, what are you coaching? What are you mentoring sales leaders to think about or lead or do differently on the other side of this pandemic?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot that happened around sales transformation, around kind of digital selling, remote selling, but I think there's really a next gen big step that's going to happen around kind of, I'll say, leveraging marketing as a true kind of revenue gen engine. So if you think about, depending how you want to define them, MQL, marketing qualified lead, sales qualified lead, to kind of actual real opportunity, kind of how efficient is that engine, and the money that's being spent in marketing, that OpEx, is that really yielding the best bang for the buck, given the best metrics, given the best return around kind of that whole engine, which, it sounds like Turbo's kind of on the path too, but probably as you get into the, IBM mass, it's going to be important for you guys to kind of keep your own people and culture and really trying to get that, sales marketing engine driving together.
And I think, listening to other people and, your sales community would be something that is right in that wheelhouse. It's not just looking at through the lens of Turbo. I want to figure out what other sales leaders and other sales, even sales account executives, are doing and take the best of what they have. And I think your community allows us to actually go across, different companies. Like I always tell my team, if you're on sales team in the Southeast, make sure you know the team in the West and take the best from them. And that's similar from any type of sales leadership as we start to look at the end of the pandemic and how it's changing. And I think that, the social network that you guys have will allow us to do just that.
So you mentioned Ben, you mentioned Jim in your journey. You mentioned, several people like Randy. Are there some coaching, Steve, or advice that you've gotten over the years that beyond your short-term performance, execution, results, you believe have had a profound impact on shaping the leader that you've become? And if so, what are those?
Well, I think it candidly starts with my parents. They've instilled a lot in me. Watching what they and how they raised me and all that stuff really, really helps. So it's definitely starts with them. But then also having those leaders over the years, like Jim and Mark and Jack and Ben, and I can go on and on. Mo he was our CFO. He now heads up customer success, and really listening to them and our board members. I think those are the people that I try to take the best. And even Oved, who runs my sales engineering, like you get him on the phone, you're going to win. But just take those things and listen to what they're saying and how they're saying, and make them your own and bottle them up. I think has led to a lot of the different, traits and characteristics that we're doing and driving today.
Randy Seidl, your crystal ball. If we're to visit with Steve Corndell in a year or 2 or 3, where is he? What is he doing? Knowing him as well as you do.
Well, he's either running IBM or running something else. How's that?
Thanks, Randy.
Steve, no pressure or anything, right?
No pressure.
You
said you're competitive, so if you could please hurry up, that'd be great.
Give me a month or two, okay?
And ideally, you got Ben or Mark or Jim carrying your golf bags for a round.
I was thinking Bill too. He can carry them.
I love it. So for one of my final questions, and again, I would encourage the audience, if you have questions of Steve, jump in and join us. But Steve, either a fun Randy Seidl story, remember this is a PG rated show, or what have you done fun during the pandemic, and what are you most looking forward to on the other side?
Well, I mean, from Randy's perspective, I think the fun one was in the synergies. When I was hired out of school, the recruiter, his name was Eric Kallenberg, and then when I went to Turbo, I figured I have to hire. And Eric hired a really great group of people that I started with at EMC that I'm still very close with. A lot of them, some of them even work at Turbo with me. And I said, that guy knows talent. So then I started talking to Eric since literally I joined Turbo to start hiring and recruiting. And then come to find out, he worked with Randy. And I actually remember going to Randy's house. This was probably 8 years or so ago, saying, hey, I want to be a CRO someday. What do I got to do? And he was kind enough to give me a whole bunch of advice, tons of different books that, he had over the years. And we stayed in touch. And obviously we still use him for recruiting today. During the pandemic, it's been different. I've got a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 4-month-old. And the 5-year-old, she always knew Daddy was on business trips, and then all of a sudden I'm here. So during the pandemic, a fun fact is I actually moved to New Hampshire for about 7 months and worked out of my New Hampshire house where my kids could be out and playing. My parents or my neighbors there. They would go down the beach and have fun. So spending a lot of time with my family instead of, the hour plus commute without traffic to Boston every day, or the longer commutes of taking flights to Florida and back in the same day. So it's been fun to spend a lot of time with my family and really hone in with my kids.
That's fantastic. Randy, I'm going to give you the same option, either a fun story about Steve or just wrap us up with the sales community.
Sure. Well, I just think overall just so great for, not to talk ages, but just kind of really just to see somebody just aspire and grow, so fast. So just it's such a huge tribute to you, Steve, in the same time to Mark and Ben and Jim and others to kind of, give you the reins and allow you to prove yourself and do so well. So not to be corny, but, super proud of you. So that's fantastic.
I appreciate all your help and guidance through the years as well.
Great. And to help others be like Steve or help Steve continue to go and grow, we have Sales Community. I always like to say it's our no-brainer 30-day free membership. For those at Turbo, Steve will be sending you a note, but no-brainer to try it. Obviously, we do it because it works. If you try it and don't want to keep going, no worries whatsoever. But in the meantime, you would have gotten some real fantastic content. So my words of wisdom is go check out salescommunity.com. And Steve and Nour, thank you so much. Really enjoyed this, our 30th episode, and look forward to the next 30.
Sounds great. For our audience, if you joined us late, you're listening to Steve Corndell, Chief Revenue Officer at Turbonomic. Great recent acquisition intent by IBM. So we can't wait to see the next chapter for Steve. Steve, thanks for joining us today.
David, Randy, thank you. I appreciate you having me on, and I'd love to do another one of these once I'm CEO of IBM. How about that?
Done.
We're going to come back and count you on that. Thanks, everybody. We got some great guests coming up. So check out salescommunity.com/events and come join us every Wednesday, typically noon Eastern, for a series of great guests and tech sales leaders that are making real difference.
And
Thanks.
we have Megan, for next week, correct?
We do. We have Megan Sullivan from SAP.
SAP. She's fantastic. So look forward to that.
Look forward to seeing you then. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.